الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأت بخير منها أو مثلها ألم تعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير ألم تعلم أن الله له ملك السماوات والأرض وما لكم من دون الله من ولي ولا نصير صدق الله العظيم. Regarding ayat number 106 of Surat al-Baqarah, we have explained briefly the specific mawdu' and topic regarding the mansukh ayat, those verses in the Quran that were mansukh, that were abrogated. There is a difference of opinion regarding these verses. What is very clear is that we have two categories of these verses. There are those verses that explain a particular hukum, a particular command. The command is made very, very clear in the ayat of the Quran. But it is understood that this ayah, this verse is speaking about a clarification regarding a particular incident from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You will not find anywhere in the ayat of the Quran regarding that particular incident. A simple example is the tahweed qibla, the change of the qibla, where before the ayat of tahweed qibla, before the verses of the change of qibla, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, along with the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, for many months, they were facing Baytul Maqdas, Jerusalem. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses in Surat al-Baqarah. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, that turn your face to the shatr of Masjid Haram, to Kaaba, Baytullah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in the middle of his salah, he turned around. There were 10 Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they were praying behind Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam at that time. And all of them turned around. And these were the ones that were given, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they were the ones that were given the glad tidings of paradise in this dunya, in this world. But this is one command where the ayah of the Quran is changing a hukum or abrogating a particular situation, a particular command. But that is not, that particular command of facing Baytul Maqdas is not found anywhere in the ayat of the Quran. But this was established from the sunan of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, the sunan of the other previous prophets, that they used to face Baytul Maqdas or Jerusalem. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this hukum, and tahweed al-qibla happened, the change of qibla happened. So this was an abrogation of a hukum. This is one type of ayat, and you'll find many ayat in the Quran like this that make very clear particular situations, particular incidents. There are particular ahkam made very, very clear regarding the ahkam of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Coming to the second category of ayat, those ayat that were revealed in the Quran, revealed in the Kalamullah. You find the verses in the Quran. A particular command is given. Then there are verses that are revealed that abrogate the hukum in those ayat. But those verses still remain in the Quran. One thing that should be understood is that there is no ayat of the Quran that does not have a purpose or does not have a meaning. But those verses that were revealed to abrogate a particular hukum, in essence, the Mufassirin have given that they are an extension of that hukum, or they're a clarification of a particular part of that hukum or that command. And that verse, though it may be abrogated, though it may be mansukh, that hukum in a particular situation, in a particular setting, under particular conditions can still apply. So that verse is not completely abrogated, or that the hukum in that verse is not completely gone. It is partially abrogated in general conditions. The ulama have various opinions regarding the exact number of verses and exact number of ahkam that are or that contain this type of abrogation. Some ulama have given up to 20 verses, some have given more, some have given less. The smallest number that has been given is 5. And even those have an explanation in particular situations. Just to give you an example, we're not going to go over all the abrogated, because for that we leave to the books of fiqh. Alhamdulillah, the fuqaha have done a very, very great khidmah for all of us. They've done all of us a very, very great service, that they have not left this topic to us, otherwise we would not even understand these verses, let alone or understand the hukum in these verses, these command in these verses. But just to give you a few examples, in Surat Al-Baqarah, in ayat number 180, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرًا الْوَصِيَّةُ لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. That it has been prescribed on you, or it has been prescribed and made fard, it is an obligation on those who pass away, meaning that before you pass away, إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرًا الْوَصِيَّةُ, that you should leave behind a will, لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ, for your parents, وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ, and for your relatives, بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, in the best way, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ, this is a right on the muttaqeen. So this ayat number 180 of Surah Al-Baqarah, it is referring to leaving behind a will for your parents and your relatives. This ayah was later abrogated or mansukh by the ayat of Surah An-Nisa. In Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in very great detail, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes into the wasiyah or inheritance. And those are specifically 2 verses in Surah An-Nisa. They are very, very difficult verses. And these verses being very, very difficult, not only are they difficult in memorizing, they're also very difficult in their command. Inheritance is a very, very difficult topic. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given particular portions to the parents, to the relatives in those verses, and also in the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, يُسِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ, that the inheritance and the will has already been fixed for your parents, and then the details go. How many portions are given to the parents, and what portions are given, and so on and so forth. So it is made very, very clear, and this verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat number 180, in general conditions, there's an abrogation to this verse. But in a particular situation, the hukum in this ayah can still apply. And that particular situation is that if there is a person who has accepted Islam, and after accepting Islam, this parents have not accepted Islam, and this person's parents are still alive, then this Muslim, he has, or he can from his own side, write out a will that the 1/3 of his wealth, which is allowed for a person to give from his own side, he's given an option to dictate for 1/3 of his wealth. So then that 1/3 portion he can dictate to his parents as will, because his parents are not Muslim. The general rule in Sharia is that non-Muslims do not inherit from a Muslim. So if there is any family member that is not a Muslim, so they will not inherit from a person who is Muslim and who passes away. So that hukum of ayat number 180, in general conditions it is mansukh, but in a very, very particular situation, and that particular situation does happen in those countries where people do accept Islam but their parents are not Muslim, and the person may pass away and his parents may still be alive. And the parents have not accepted Islam, so then a portion of this person's wealth he can write and will to be given to his parents. So in that type of particular situation, this is one example of how the ayat of the Quran, though they may be mansukh, though they may be abrogated in general, but in a particular situation, in particular settings, that hukum can still exist, that command can still exist. And this is not just one area. You can go throughout all the ayat that are mansukh, all of those verses that are abrogated. There are, in particular settings, you can find some application that may still apply in Sharia. And again, you can go to the books of fiqh and to the fuqaha. They have gone in very great detail and very great length. They have gone into this, the details of these verses and how they still apply, or what are the particular ahkam related within these verses. It's a very, very detailed topic. It's a very, very, of course, again, a person has to have very deep knowledge of fiqh and sharia just to understand the depth or understand the scope of many of these verses. I, again, made it as simple as I could. We're all students of Quran and Sunnah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us. But the very little bit that we can explain and very little bit that we can understand in particular settings, and again, the kind of khidmat and the kind of services that the fuqaha have done, one can be amazed at what kind of details and what kind of scenarios they have given, where a particular ayah, though may be mansukh, that hukum can still apply. And that is what is the beauty of the Quran, that there is no verse in the Quran that does not have a purpose. And this is what is the miracle of the Quran itself. Someone might say, or there may be someone that might claim that, okay, there's a particular verse in the Quran that is abrogated or it is mansukh, then that means that, na'udhu billah, there's some part of the Quran that does not have any kind of purpose or it is useless. No, this is not. Every single verse in the Quran has very, very deep wisdom. And this is the wisdom behind the mansukh ayat. That is one portion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He never abrogates any verse. أَوْ نُنْسِهَا, or we cause you to forget that verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have revealed some verses and then has made those verses forgotten. We don't know what those verses are because they were forgotten. That's one thing very, very clear. So it's very difficult to even try and comment or even understand that. But just to give our own, just for our own understanding, just for our own understanding, that many times as human beings, we understand that we go through various stages and various phases in our lives. And each one of these phases often a time are based on a previous phase. And the previous phase, sometimes you have to completely remove it to bring about something new. There's a famous Arabic saying, كُلُّ جَدِيدٍ لَذِيذٍ إِلَّا الْمَوْتُ وَأَسْبَابُهُ, that every new thing is very sweet except death and the stages of death. That's the only thing that's not sweet. Everything else that's new, this is very, very sweet. That's why sometimes we get new things, we want people to appreciate them. We wear new clothes, we want everybody to notice that they're new. After 2 or 3 days, we don't even care. We get a new car, mashallah, we tell everybody it's a new car. We get a new watch, mashallah, we try to flash it in front of everyone. But this is the reality of us human beings, that every new thing is very nice. Many a time, sometimes to get something new, you have to remove the old thing. How many times in our lives, in our homes, we have to change a door, you have to take out the old door, put a new one in. Or how many times you have to remove something. Now that doesn't mean that what was there before did not fulfill a purpose. It did fulfill a purpose to its time. And to that particular amount that it fulfilled its purpose, now it was time to change it. Once we changed it, now it became even better or more beautiful. And this is just within our society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some cases may have revealed some verses for a particular incident, for a particular time. May have revealed many of these kind of verses as hadith qudsi. They may not necessarily have been part of the Quran. Again, we don't know because those portions were then forgotten. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that portion to be forgotten and to be God. These are kind of the stepping stones to other ahkam and other verses in the Quran. So this is one thing very, very clear. It does not mean that this did not happen, but these are things that we're building blocks and we build onto them. When we're very young, first thing we learn in arithmetic is your numbers. After you learn your numbers, you realize that numbers isn't everything. And now you have to learn how to add the numbers. And you realize it's an amazing, to the child who's learning how to do addition, they're amazed. Then you realize there's something that you can also subtract numbers. Now it's even more amazing. To the child, not to us, mashallah. We may be laughing at this topic because now, mashallah, we have grown in this whole topic. But go sit with the child. You'll be surprised how amazed the child is that you can add something, you can subtract something. Oh, this is the whole child's world. He's learned something new. And as you start going, you realize that there's a point that comes where you start to multiply numbers. Now addition almost becomes obsolete. You don't have to go back and say this plus this, then multiplied by this. No, it's just automatic. Things become almost automatic. Time comes, you learn division, then you start to go into higher math. And a point comes where you realize that if you had not learned the basic arithmetic, most of the advanced mathematics and probability and statistics and things that you may have learned later on, they would not have made any sense to you, even calculus and whatever else is there. They would not have made any sense to you. You need that foundational math to understand everything else. If someone says, what's the benefit of learning this little basic numbers or this basic arithmetic? What is the benefit of learning this? The benefit of that is that later on you'll use them. But these are the building blocks that later on in your life, of course, nobody's going to give you a degree if you can count from 1 to 100. Huh? Nobody's going to give you a degree if you can add or subtract. This doesn't require a degree. But understanding this and using this in further advanced mathematics, then yes, you require a degree. And the same applies to any other field of science that we may understand, any other field of knowledge that we may know. There are many, many things that are building blocks. No one actually gives any kind of degree for the building blocks. What those building blocks are used for and what the conclusions you may reach, yes, then there are degrees for that. Similarly, there are many, many verses in the Quran, many ayat in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought about the ahkam very gradually. And they were kind of the building blocks for many of the other ahkam that are there today. What those were, many of them may have been forgotten, many of them were mansukh, whatever the case is, this is the wisdom of the Quran in itself. And it's a very, very deep wisdom. Once you start to understand how deep this wisdom can go, one can be surprised and one can be amazed. And this also, many a times when you read a verse or a hukum or a command in the Quran, and you want to understand the depth of the wisdom within these verses, or within that hukum, that command, you go back to what this command was replacing. And you can be amazed how perfect the deen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, how perfect this religion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. Every single care was taken to make sure this is the perfect and the best of all of the honor, the best of all of the religions. So this is what is also meant by nun siha, that we made you forget something. Many of those things that were even forgotten, there was very, very great wisdom behind it. نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا. We bring to you or we give you something that is better than that which we abrogated or better than that which we made you to forget. This is very, very clear. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives a much better hukum, a much better system, a system that is far, and I just gave you the example of inheritance. If we were to sit down and try to work out inheritance ourselves, how difficult it would become. But you read the verses, it's amazing how perfect the math of those verses is. And it's impossible for someone who does not even know, or someone who has even studied advanced mathematics, to come up with such a perfect system as inheritance. If you study inheritance law, it's amazing. The inheritance of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the inheritance of the Quran and what this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, that inheritance in mathematics is so perfect. One can be surprised at how can a human being come up with this. There was one of the students in his doctorate, when he was doing his doctorate degree, he did his thesis in the inheritance of Islam. And after he finished his thesis in his defense, he accepted Islam. Someone asked him, why did you accept Islam? He said it is impossible for someone who has not gone to high levels of university to even understand this math. How perfect it is. He said there's no mistakes in it. You know, many a times in formulas, when professors even write out for you, find some mistake, something that needs to be fixed. In the ayat of the Quran, there's not even a single mistake. And something that is even more amazing is those verses of inheritance are in Surat An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa is about 200 ayat. And Surah An-Nisa, the whole surah was revealed at one time. That's what makes Surah An-Nisa so amazing. The ahkam and the commands in Surah An-Nisa are so deep. It is such a deep surah. It is a very difficult surah also. But the whole surah was revealed at one time. And just to come to such perfection and have such perfect system as far as the distribution and the factors that are related to that distribution of inheritance, one can be amazed at how perfectly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those verses, He gives the portions. And this is just one example. There are many, many other examples in relation to the abrogation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا. We give you something far better than what we have abrogated, or we give you something far better than what we have made you to forget. نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. Or we give you something like it. Sometimes the hukum is given in the Quran. It may have been given in the Quran in a particular language that the Arab may have understood. There was a need for a more eloquent language, the language of the Quran. More eloquent words were needed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses of the Quran to make it even far more eloquent than what the Arabs, but the first portion was given so that they may understand. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum may get the message based on their language. And then the language of the Quran was given, which made it even more beautiful and more poetic. This is the amazing thing about the ayat of the Quran. So something exactly like it, but the words were even more beautiful. And one thing that should be understood that's so amazing about the Quran is when you study the various qira'at and come into the system of the sab'a qira'a ashra riwaya, when you study the 7 qira'at and the 10 riwayat related to that, there are portions in the Quran, and we're not going to go into the details of what duha, what duhi, what duha. It's a whole different system. Maliki yawmiddin and Maliki yawmiddin and Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki yawmiddin. How many different ways the Quran is recited. In itself, it's very, very beautiful. When you listen to the various kind of Qur'an and the various styles that they read in, one can be surprised. The famous one that we use is Hafs and Asim. Okay? And we stick with that. It's easy. That's the one that's generally used in most places in the Quran, most places in the world. That is the style that is recited. There are other styles that are also famous in various other parts of the world. Anyhow, there are parts of the Quran, there are verses in the Quran, that in particular verses, one word may be replaced with another word in a different qira'ah. And what is amazing is that the word that is replaced in that qira'ah sounds even more beautiful. But the meaning doesn't change. And if you give the tafseer in all the various words, one can even be more surprised at how perfectly the tafseer fits based on that word. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's too many examples to give. But just for our own understanding, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. There was an incident that there was a Sahabi, he was sent to one village, and there's a shani nuzul to this particular verse. There's a incident that happened and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse. So the Sahabi, when he was sent to that village, and he was told to collect zakah from the people. So it was customary at that time that in various villages, for protection, they used to send out their security. They used to patrol the area. So one of the patrols saw this Sahabi coming and questioned him what he was doing. And the patrol realized that this Sahabi is coming to collect zakah. So this patrol went to the nation, to the leaders of that village, and told that village that the Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is coming, and he is coming to collect zakah. It was very, very customary at that time, that particular village. They used to have this custom that when they wanted to honor a guest, they all used to come out of the village. That's kind of like, they used to receive the guest. So they realized that this is a great Sahabi, so they all came out of the village and they were going to receive him. And this Sahabi, when he saw all the villagers come out of their homes, he got scared. He said, oh, they're ready to attack me, He took a different meaning from it. So he went back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he narrated to him that I went to collect zakah and they were about to kill me, So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam organized a group of Sahaba and went with their, they had their weapons and everything. They were ready to defend the Sahabi. And when they went there, people were kind of surprised that, why are you coming to fight us? We didn't, it's our custom. This is our custom that we come out and we show respect. We didn't mean any kind of harm. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse before they had already gone. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, all those of you who believe. In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in, if there's someone who comes to you, a fasiq comes to you, and again, the term fasiq here is somebody who misunderstands the situation. Speaking about that Sahabi who misunderstood the situation. Fatabayyanu, then you should properly research. Fatabayyanu means investigate before you take any action. Before you cause trouble or you end up getting into something that was very disliked, first investigate. أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. Before you end up, because of ignorance, taking action and later on you regret it. So first and foremost, investigate. In one of the qira'at, or in some of the qira'at, the word fatabayyanu, investigate, it is replaced with fatathabbatu. The verse comes in different qira'at. From fatabayyanu, the word is changed to fatathabbatu. And again, in meaning, fatathabbatu means to give ithbat, to confirm something before you take action. So fatabayyanu, investigate, fatathabbatu, confirm something before you take action. But in that qira'ah where the word fatathabbatu is replaced, in that qira'ah it sounds far more beautiful. And even in the tafseer, it makes sense. So there were certain verses where some of the words may have been changed. But you go to the other qira'at and you can find those words. It's not that it is completely gone. This is another beauty of the Quran also. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا, in verse number 106 of Surat al-Baqarah, that we will give you something better than what we have abrogated or we made you to forget. Or mithliha, or we give you something like it. We may replace a word with another word. We may have replaced something in certain places, but you'll still find it in the other qira'at, in the other revelations, in the way that the Quran was revealed. And it should be understood that the Quran was revealed in all of those qira'at that are there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا وَمِثْلِهَا أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Don't you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete power over everything? The details of this inshallah will go on from tomorrow. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.
Quick question. I have a quick question.
Inshallah after the dua. Inshallah. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم نور قلوبنا بالقرآن وزين أخلاقنا بالقرآن ونجنا من النار بالقرآن وادخلنا في الجنة بالقرآن. اللهم اجعل القرآن لنا في الدنيا قرينا وفي القبر مونسا وعلى الصراط نورا وفي الجنة رفيقا ومن النار سترا وحجابا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين. الحمد لله رب العالمين.